So good morning, everyone. I'm sure there will be some other people sneaking in. I'm actually glad we're in here for two reasons. One, we weren't able to use Fellowship Hall because somebody's renting it today. So that's good. And the other thing is, it seems whenever we do a meeting in here, I don't know if it's a holdover from church or not, but people are really eager to get out of here. So hopefully we'll keep this into a brief meeting. I've already done a head count as everyone was coming in. Unfortunately, our quorum is only 18 people and we exceed that. So having a quorum, I call this meeting to order at 11:13. Pastor?
Working earlier. Why does it make keep popping up?
I'll have one working. Is this working?
Yes. Try that one. Somehow the mute was staying stuck on.
Thank you, Clark.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I just wanted to not necessarily lead us in a whole devotion, but to take the time to pray again together. Are there any joys or concerns to lift up? And as you name them, we'll just say that's a petition, and then I'll wrap things up with a prayer. So are there joys or concerns to share among the community? Sharon?
Concern for my granddaughter.
Concern for your granddaughter. Her first name? Madeline. We'll hold Madeline in our hearts. For Chloe? Claire. Sorry about that.
Claire has been fighting a battle that they can't figure out what's wrong with her. She's 17.
17 has been fighting a health battle for years, and so we hold up Claire.
It's a severe
Illness.
She's got a feeding tube.
Oh, goodness.
Can't walk, and it's very concerning.
Okay, Madeline and Claire. Others, joys, concerns? Nancy?
I don't have permission to share the name, but there's someone in this congregation who had to go without heat for 5 or 6 days.
Oh my goodness. If there's anything, okay, twofold, we'll hold that person up, and we do have Good Samaritan funds if that's related to that at all. Yeah.
I have a joy, and that is I saw the first blooming tree.
Joy for the first blooming tree. Yay! I saw another hand over here. Jeff.
My brother's on dialysis, has been for several years. He's deteriorating. Prayers for him. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Others?
Yes, just prayers for our friend Marina who passed away this week.
So sorry. A lot.
Just prayer Thanksgiving for Rhonda.
Prayer of thanksgiving for Rhonda and Janet, indeed. Amen. Music is an important ministry among us. Oop, Paula.
I just wanted to say how thankful I am for Luther House and the young people that came today. They're just, God is alive.
Yeah, we could see that. Oh, and Bill's got it.
And I want to thank Jim Sattler, who gave us enough cottonwood stumps and tree branches to fill the Calico play yard, which is done, and you all should look at that facility now. 42 children are now enrolled in Calico.
I think we have a date set, I don't have that in my head, for a crossover event between Calico and St. Paul to give thanks for all the efforts and work into that. Others, just a reminder that we all come from so many things going on in our lives, and we come here and we find this hopefully a sanctuary space. We find support and love. We find God in different ways than out and about. Certainly God is out and about all around, but there's something particular about coming together as a community. So we pray. Good and gracious God, thank you for a beautiful, feels like spring day. We give thanks for your incredible presence among us. We have lifted up many joys and concerns. We know that you have heard them. We know that you walk with us throughout each step as we journey together. Be with us this day especially as we engage in the business of St. Paul, which really is wrapped all in service and discipleship with you and for you. And so be among us as we continue to navigate steps into the future that you are leading. Thank you for all of the leaders, those who are unseen behind the scenes, and certainly those up front who are leading in voice and action. In your Son's amazing name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. One of the numerous pieces of paper that you got at the front door was an agenda for today. This congregation meeting is going to be kind of a hybrid of our typical spring congregation meeting, which in the past was just the presentation, or primarily the presentation of the annual report. We have a bunch of holdover business from the fall, including approval of a budget, which normally takes the majority of the fall meeting in itself, and a couple small election of officers and an endorsement of a constitutional amendment. So is there anything we as a congregation need to discuss that I didn't have on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll dive right in. The first thing on the agenda is a proposed constitutional amendment which was emailed out to everyone, and a hard copy was given this morning. The Congregation Council voted on this in January and accepted it. And to summarize the two changes that are highlighted in the document, this document allows us to be more flexible in the number of members of the Congregation Council. As you'll remember from our fall meeting, it was very difficult as our numbers are contracting to fill all of the positions, not only on council, but on everything else the church does. So this allows us to do a minimum number of attendees rather than a dictated number of members of the council.
I move that we endorse the proposed constitutional amendment.
A second.
Moved by Jeff, seconded by Joe. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? We will send it off to the Synod for their final approval, and then we'll put it into the, and it will become part of the Constitution. that we will probably have another one in the fall based on what comes out of the next one. We have 2 executive committee member vacancies on the council right now. As I think everybody's aware, Susan Eberlein, who has done a yeoman's job over the last 2.5 years as our secretary, has moved on and taken a position at another congregation as their accompanist, so she no longer feels appropriate to sit on the executive committee. So we need to fill the secretary position. Right now, Nancy, who is a former secretary to the Congregation Council, has stepped in to take notes, but we're looking for somebody to fill the position for the rest of this year, and the secretary position was already going to be one of the positions that needed to be filled in the fall. So this is a temporary fill of the position for the rest of this year. Is there anyone interested? Thank you, Nancy.
Character, what do they call that when you, well, no, there's like when you fill a particular role as an actor. Yeah, then you always get that typecast.
Is there anyone else interested in stepping forward? Hearing none? If I could second it, I would.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, Nancy. That then puts a highlight.
Who made the
on-
motion?
Huh?
Who made the motion? Did anyone?
Who did make the motion? I heard a second. Joe seconded.
Nancy raised her.
Okay,
Okay.
Sharon made the motion. It's just like a council meeting all over. That does make a vacancy for the rest of this year for Nancy's position on the council. But if we've already endorsed the we can be smaller, we may or may not need to fill it, or the council can fill, or if somebody would like a 6-month journey into being a member of council, we're a fun group.
Or if you want to pray about it and let
Yes.
either Roger or I
And
know.
what normally happens when the secretary is a member of the executive council, the council itself can vote on filling a standard vacancy.
Roger, there was a question on how often the council meets and the day and the time. You know, before you volunteer,
Sure.
people will want to know the details.
Great.
Yeah, and in addition to that, we can get you the Constitution, which gives you a brief overview of what are your responsibilities as a council person, right?
The council normally meets on Sundays now after adult education. We were alternating as 1 week or 1 month in person and then 1 month via Zoom. This month would have been a Zoom meeting, but the council has decided we don't like meeting via Zoom. We have better camaraderie and discussions in person, so the Zoom ones may fall to the side. Since that came up in my previous one, could the current members of council stand just so everybody knows why you're not volunteering? This is a very, very good and effective council, and they are good people to join. So if you're interested, please let me know.
And it is once a month. There are some votes that go out via email occasionally,
Yes.
so some things come up, so we don't call a special meeting that we can handle via email. We do that as well.
The other vacancy we have is a holdover from the fall, and that was the president-elect position, who will serve as president-elect for the rest of this year, and then as the Constitution is written right now, will be the president of the council next year, and then the following year, they get 1 year to kibitz from the corner and be the past president and advise the current president on doing the job. So realistically, stepping forward to be the president is a 1-year commitment as president, 1 year to learn the job first, 1 year to do the job, and 1 year to tell your successor what he's doing wrong, right, Jeff? Again, if anyone's interested, I would really like to fill this position. Really like to fill this position. We're having a lot of difficulty filling this, and it really isn't a difficult position. There's a little bit of administrative work, setting the agenda up front and answering calls from the pastor. We need to talk about this. But like I said, it's a great group to work with, and I highly endorse it. And there's a lot of past presidents sitting in this room. Paul, Paula, Jeff. Ooh, there's a trend there. Nancy. So please consider it, step forward, let me know, and if someone comes forward, we will vote it in council and move forward. I have made a personal commitment to myself not to continue doing this regularly, although if I can do it, anybody can. So please step forward and help us into the future. So I guess that's a no, Nancy. The next one is what would normally be the focus of this meeting, and that's a presentation of the last year's congregation report. You have hard copies of it. Please take time and read it. All of the ministries and committees within the church have put time into this to show their activities of the last year, and to present it to you, I am very pleased to call my immediate predecessor, Jeff Peterson, up since this was under his outstanding leadership that we had a successful 2022.
Thank you. So we traditionally start these meetings, and I'll go through that right now. I really want everybody to focus on the first thing in here, or one of the first things, and that is the behavioral covenant. So take a minute, and while I'm talking, you can, it's not like I'm that exciting to listen to, so you can read through that behavioral covenant, because it's really important in meetings like this. We violated it in the past, and we probably will again, but it's still good to keep it in mind, just so that we are aware of the importance of everybody's voice. So with that, I'll go through kind of briefly with what's in here. I'm not going to summarize each thing because it's already in here, written down, but I do want to point out a few things. First of all, one of the things after the attendance and membership information, there is information, there's 2 minutes in here from the 2 previous, both of last year's congregational meeting, which we have not approved yet. So I need a motion. Let's start with the first one. A motion? Okay, the spring was approved then. Okay. The fall evidently was not approved yet, so we need to approve the fall minutes. So if I can get a motion to approve that. Terry?
I move that we approve the fall minutes.
Thank you, Terry. Do we have a second? Okay. Peggy? So with that, anybody, any discussion or changes to it? Alrighty, then let's go ahead and move or vote on approval. All in agreement with approving these minutes?
And you'll notice how my lips didn't even move.
Okay, opposed? All right. The next up are all the reports in here. Just to let you know, whoever wrote the report and who is in charge, the code person or the chairman for each of the chairwoman of each of the committees or groups, they're all signed by those people. So as you read through here, please go to see them directly if you have any questions about what they've written or any such interest in joining one of those groups. Just go see that person and they'd be happy to welcome you, and I'm sure. Like for instance, what Calico has done is in their report and that playground information and all the progress that's been going on in there. Some good information in these reports, so please have a look at each one of them. And then finally, I'd point out, I don't want to list off all of them. You can see them in the table of contents, and then it ends, the end of this report kind of closes with how we did for the year in financials. There's the finance report from SIG and treasurer's report that explains exactly how we ended up as a congregation. And Paul's right there, and SIG if you have any questions for them. So if nobody has questions right now, we can move on. All right. Thank you.
I just want to thank Jeff for an outstanding job last year and for volunteering to do a 3-year stint. And I will pass our appreciation on to your boss at work so that he knows how good you are and why you're not doing your job for me, him. All right. The next one is the approval of the 2023 budget. This normally would have been done at our fall congregation meeting. At that time, the council had deemed a postponal till after we were able to have the congregation all hands to set the priorities, because nothing happens without funding, to ensure that we took the priorities that the council had at the town hall meeting and incorporate them into the budget. We did have a preliminary provisional budget that had been developed by the finance committee using the standard practice of starting about a year ago, SIG, right? Of gathering information and bottom-up development. Then the finance committee sent that to the Congregation Council. The Congregational Council was the one that deemed it necessary to table a budget and just go forward with a continuing resolution to spend to last year's budget until we had the time to put this new budget together. Let's see, then the next step was the town hall meeting, and the top priorities of the town hall meeting were then incorporated into a draft revised budget by the executive committee, who then forwarded it to the finance committee with the recommendation that that become the budget for this year. Then the finance committee sent it back to council. Council actually reviewed it for 2 full months, or 2 full meeting cycles, before we accepted it and bring it before you today as the proposed budget for this year. So that's the history of how it was developed, and the reason I wanted to go over that is there was a lot of forethought, input, and concern put into this budget because of the priorities and where money was put, and Paul has done a fantastic job in the document you have identifying where the changes came from that were in that budget and why it went forward. And at this time, because I don't like standing up here, I'm going to ask Paul and Sig to come forward and answer any questions that the floor may have. I'm going to. Shirley, you're not keeping me on track. We have to have a motion first before we can have discussion of the budget. Thank you, Sig. Is there a second? Sharon seconded. Sig and Paul?
Well, Paul did a wonderful job. If you read the fine print in the comments column, I think you'll.
Really don't be careful. Okay.
I think most of the questions would be clearly, for those of you who attended the town hall meeting, we came away with the priorities of improving the sellability of the sanctuary here, to improve the income for the year, and probably the only change to the budget or change from last year, the provisional budget, directly related to increasing the usability of the sanctuary, was in the income line, where we were very optimistic and expecting to see $17,000 of new income through the use of this facility, which is clearly well above what was experienced for last year, but there was virtually no advertising or attempt to increase the use of the facility last year. And there are a number of efforts ongoing so far, but in terms of the town hall meeting that said, well, we're going to improve the usability of the sanctuary, that was the one major item, and the other is rolled into Deb's use in the office coordinator role, and the hours available for her, and for the providing some contract funds for her to use a contractor if necessary to help again with either the secretary of the sanctuary advertisement improvement, or some of the other ideas that she has for wanting to improve the office efficiency. Those were the two of the major items, and the third one was obviously the music program. And if you read the notes, we're funding a music director and an accompanist for the year at not minimum, but certainly not extravagant funding to keep a management structure in place for the choir. So with that overview, Paul, do you want to add anything?
Well, I mentioned the additional line.
You'll need to go by the mic, please.
Under contracted services and office support line, which is intended to be available for building facility support, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you mention that? I missed it. I don't know.
I thought I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, I would entertain, you want to go into the nitty-gritty of any long item? Now's the time.
Quick question. If we adopt this budget today, or a change to budget, will it be retroactive from January 1st, or from some date in the future?
The parts of it will be retroactive. Salary for pastor, I think it'll be kind of, we'll have to work out how it applies to other staff members, depending on hours actually worked. In other categories, it's kind of a little bit more not as clear how it applies. I think to be determined in many cases, but like I said, pastor's salary for sure,
And Deb's salary. And if I could interject, I think basically from this point forward on most of the other things, we'd kind of start with where are our expenses and then plunk in the new numbers for the budget going forward. Would that be fair to say?
that's probably a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Now, I've been struggling with actually how I will enter the budget in the books. I think the reporting will probably show these new numbers as the annual budget in our reports, because that's what we're passing. We're not passing a 10-month budget, we're passing a 12-month budget, I think. And we may not spend all of this 12 months worth of allocation, but we will spend at a rate that is commensurate with this number, even if we're not going back and filling in the last 2 months. Does that make sense?
We need to recognize, this is the first time that I can remember us ever postponing the budget decisions to take place after the year has started. Usually this all happens, as Roger said, in the fall meeting, and so we got the budgets in place at the beginning of the year. So there's going to be some transitional things, changes that are going to have to be made as the year goes on, just because we're learning to deal with this first occasion.
Paul, can you highlight last year's bottom line and what this budget is?
Last year's,
So the question was, you asked him to summarize where we landed at the end of 2022.
What's in the report of where we ended last year and where this budget, if approved, will put us at the end of this year?
yeah, well, the bottom line on page 3 shows last year's budget to be a negative 48,000. We finished the year at negative 36, and the new budget we're asking you to approve is a $59,000 deficit. Given the changes.
And
Questions?
recognize the changes. One of the major increases was a direct result of the comments made at the all-hands meeting, where all of these 3 issues were discussed considerably by most of the people in this room.
All right, and 2 of the 3 had budgetary expenses, not the income, and we're going to address that 3rd one for the sanctuary project. Roger will speak to that a little bit later about that's not within, expenses for that project are not in the budget. We're going to address that in a different manner. Questions?
Yes, Dana?
Thanks for your hard work on this budget. I know this has not been an easy job. The question I have is, I noticed that, as Sig, you mentioned, we're going from this past year having like 7,000 something of income based on rental of the facilities, and now the proposed or the hoped for income would be more like 17,000. So I'm wondering, that 10,000 that we're hoping to rent, can you talk a little bit more about that, and like how we think we're going to get that wonderful number, or what the thoughts are?
Well, I guess that's based on,
If you get in front of the mic, please.
Can you hear me? I think that's based on a couple of factors. One is there was virtually no effort required to get the $7,000 or $8,000 to come in from last year. And of course, we've had Cora Lux and the Albuquerque Chamber Soloists that have been using the facility for years, and all the indications I've heard are that they continue to want to continue to use the sanctuary. So given that these two musical groups are interested in that, and plus the fact that Brad at the all-hands meeting indicated that he was willing to lend a little bit of hand from the management or the recognition or his knowledge of the music organizations in the community, who could give us a hand. We don't know what he might come up with, but certainly that's optimistic concern, which would be a much more difficult problem to dig into that community without somebody of his stature. So that's one item. Yes, Pastor.
Yeah, if I could piggyback on that too, that Dave Kelly and the finance team have done a great job of digging into or starting to look at that process. Are we charging enough for the space that we have and the beautiful space that we have? So that prices will likely go up a little bit. We don't want to price anyone out, but I think prices will go up.
And then, Dana, the whole reason we're in here today is because the facility is being rented by a group that a year ago wasn't renting from us.
No, that's Greater Albuquerque. I would call them a partner just because we do use them. I know we as a congregation as a whole don't cross paths, and the pastor and I of that congregation and I are trying to put our heads together to see how we might. Their worship is very different, but they're worshiping community and they're sharing space. Bigger than a rental, if you will.
Right. So to go back to your question, one point of view could be it's just wishful thinking, but I think it's wishful thinking based on more than just pulling a number out of the air. People are working the issue, which to my knowledge has not happened in the past.
And what we hope that means too for Deb, by providing more hours, that we can dedicate a little bit of time to that, and also perhaps call upon you as volunteers to help be curators or hospitality folks, as we do have groups that are unfamiliar with the space, to be able to use it good and well.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, Terry.
My question is about Stephen Ministry down to zero. We didn't spend any last time, probably because we had already stocked up on books, but we send out books, grief books, a series of grief books, and if we would ever get enough people who want to be trained, we would need to purchase training materials. I just wonder, like, if we need more grief books, where are we going to charge it? If there's
Which
no
category? Stephen Ministry. Sorry, Terry, I don't recall getting any input from you about the budget for next year, from when I sent the budget call out last summer.
I guess I just thought that 200, since we hadn't spent it, would still be there. Sorry.
I suspect this year we could easily, there are probably some undesignated funds that we might be able to
I guess-
purchase.
Yeah, the council can make minor changes in the budget after the fact, so if Stephen Ministry comes up with a hard need for something, Terry, you can bring it to the council and they'll fund it for you. And won't require the congregation to meet again. Okay. Any other questions? Al, come on, you always have a question. Okay. I call for the question.
Any more discussion? Mina?
Hang on, Mina.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, thank you. So I have questions. So, the mileage expense, it say 0. Is that like, why? And I don't know, the way I look at it is that for like, you know, if someone need the pastor to visit them or something like that, does that count as the mileage?
Mileage was 0 on the budget.
I can speak to that too. Is it mostly affects me, I think. I pretty much don't charge for in-town mileage. It's not a big deal for me. But if it is, the ones that have counted are going to Rainbow Trail, and then we take it out of that bigger, so it's not in the general fund, it's in a specialized fund.
Well, doesn't that cover travel to the Synod convention?
That would come out of the other Synod assemblies. So if it's a larger trip and travel expense, we usually have money budgeted for that particular thing. Rainbow Trail Camp, Synod Assembly, Bishop's Retreat, all of those are kind of incorporated into like a specific event. And I have just said basically the in and about mileage, that's, I guess, my gift to you. It's not a huge deal.
And what was the other question you had?
The other question was that I'm in personnel, and some of the things that I had questioned, and they say, talk about it on Sunday, was about the choir director salary, and it's for 42 services, and I had the question and say, you know, why is that? And at the time, it's because the choir in the summer are on break. However, I don't know for someone who say, okay, what do they do for the rest of the week? My concern for the rest of for the summer, I guess, is why is it not all year round? I understand that choir is on break during the summer, but right now with the way, you know, job seeker and things like that, the way it is right now, the economy and whatnot, if we find someone that is good, I feel that we need to figure out and find a way, something outside of the box to say, okay, we'll have this person, you know, work all year round and not just you're off for the summer. If they find a job somewhere else, then they stay because they work for a whole year somewhere else.
I'm not sure I got the question.
I think in essence of why 42 weeks versus 52 weeks. Why are we not paying them for every week even in the summer when the choir's not singing.
Well, I think we know from the most recent experience, we'd shifted it to a Sunday only and a per call, where the choir meets on Sunday, rehearses and performs, all for one, performance or call for the director. And so that, for the current model, is the way that the budget was built around that. Now, and the fact that if the choir is not going to sing or rehearse for the summer, then we did not provide a funding for it. I thought I saw Terry's hand go up first.
Me too, but Jan has the mic.
Okay.
I have the mic, so I have the floor.
You're up.
I have served in that position in many congregations. The work does not end because you're planning all that summertime. It's like being a teacher. They're paid year-round, not just the 9 months that they're in school, because there's all this other stuff that has to happen in order for the choir and the music program to be successful. And so I think they should be paid the whole time.
Could you do something like prorate take the total amount you're going to pay them for the year and prorate it for 52 weeks? Just an idea.
Jan basically covered what I was going to say, but also during the summer, the choir director or whatever we're naming him or her in this case, needs to plan for special music instead of the choir, so they need to be involved the whole year, in my opinion.
There could be a proposal for us to increase that amount and do a line item change, or we can, I don't know what we need to do with it. It sounds like there's some energy behind it.
I'd like to make a motion that we increase that line item by $2,250. That would be 10 more weeks at $225 a service. So that's my motion.
Is there a second? Well, I think we've heard 5 people so far speak to the idea that it should be the position should be funded for the year. Is there any other discussions in support or against it?
In all fairness, if there are those that want to speak against it, that's how we are as a community. It's okay to disagree.
Yes, Nancy.
I just have a question. Where does the contributions for benevolence come from?
They come from 2 sources: the budget line item and the people who mark their envelopes, benevolence.
So the 1,700 is from projected donations from the congregation? First page.
Well, it's an estimate of looking at what the benevolence contributions were for 2022, plus added to the 3% of the budget that we get from the Senate. Senate allocation.
Are you looking at page 1?
Page 1,
Mission support?
income, under church income.
Those are donations that are designated for mission support. That goes directly to the Senate. And it's separate. If you go to page 2, the amount sent in mission support expense is that amount plus 3% of contributions for general use. Now,
What page is that on again?
Right here.
What?
Second page.
Second
page.
Top of page 2.
mission support expense.
So 9308 is that the total?
Now, if you're wondering why that's 3%, a year ago, in order to keep the budget from being as large a deficit as it might have been, the council took the action to reduce that amount to 3% and to take 4% from endowment proceeds. Now, the council has not acted to continue that yet. That's something I would like for us to consider. But that's what we've been doing in 2022 and into first 2 months of this year. What's that?
Does that answer your question, Nancy? Or are you still confused?
So it was reduced to 3% from?
7.
From 7.
It had previously been, in recent years, it's been 7.
But the endowment revenue isn't in that number.
So endowment revenue makes up what we reduced in the general budget we take from the endowment. So it's still 7% total. Is that accurate?
It has been.
Okay. It has been.
Plus the amount that is earmarked by the contributor as in mission support income on page 1.
So it's complicated. It's by what we happen to give above and beyond in our weekly or yearly giving, however often we give. Plus it's a percentage of what the total of everybody is giving, right? Is that 3%? Would that be right? We give
3% of contributions
contributions
for general use.
For general use. And then the other 4% that we had reduced comes from endowment proceeds.
Yes. Now, I will add that we've been allocating from the endowment something a little over $50,000 from endowment. This year, the Finance Committee allocated $32,000 because the market declined so badly last year. I don't know if that'll be readdressed later in the year, but that's where it is right now. We have a smaller allocation from the endowment so far. So I don't know how that's going to work out. That's to be determined. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bob.
This is an interesting discussion, but there's a motion on the floor to increase. There is a motion on the floor to increase the salary for the choir music director.
Right.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay.
Okay.
So the discussion should be limited to that motion.
You want to get back to the
Yes.
original motion?
Yes, otherwise,
The amendment to the motion.
otherwise I'm going to rise to a point of order. We're doing this illegally if we don't deal with that motion.
Thank you, Bob, for keeping us honest. We have an amendment on the floor to increase the budget by 10 weeks for the choir director.
I second.
Yeah, it's been seconded.
It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion?
We're ready to go.
Just on the amendment, which is to add the 10 weeks worth of choir director pay to the budget. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We'll make that adjustment to the budget. Now we'll go on to discussion of the next. Continue the discussion, Bob?
Did you have the same issue related to the,
We're back to discussion of the budget.
Yes.
well, the most recent issue?
It wasn't a motion.
There was no motion.
We're discussing
Yeah.
the next item that needs to be addressed.
Most recent discuss on the general budget was Nancy's question about benevolence contributions. Did you want to make a comment on benevolence?
The motion on the floor is to adopt the budget. We've had a lot of discussion about the budget, including an amendment. But right now, the motion on the floor is whether to adopt the budget. If there is discussion that's germane to that, we should have it. Yes?
Yes.
Dave?
I just wanted to ask a question. Is that additional $2,000 add on?
Hold on, let's wait for the mic.
This is just a follow-on question relative to the $2,000 increase for the choir. Now, does that change the deficit from minus 59 to 61?
Yep.
And everybody's okay with it?
Yes. Most of the people in the room voted for it.
Can we discuss a little bit further about where that comes from?
Okay, I'm not sure where to go. Are we going back? So I'm not sure we land on this. We did vote for the line item increase. So Bob, parliamentarian, do we continue that discussion or the other item?
There is no motion on the floor, you can't discuss it. So if you want to go back, you'll have to have a motion to rescind.
Okay.
I don't think, and Dave can correct me if I'm misunderstanding. I don't think he's asking us to rescind that decision. I think he's asking, where does the 59,000 deficit come? How do we deal with that deficit? Now we've raised it by 2,000, which we all agreed to do. That decision has been made. He's asking, how do we deal with that? And he said, yes, that's what he meant.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Bob is saying we need to say, is there a motion on the table to adopt this budget? And then if there's a second, then we have this discussion. Is that correct?
We have a seconded amendment, or a motion on the floor to adopt the budget. We adopted an amendment to that budget. And now the question is whether we approve the amended budget.
And we're discussing.
You can discuss that.
Okay.
And
So I think the question is, how do we address the deficits? Whether it be 56 or 59 or 65 or 110.
I understand you.
She's asking, so back to Dave's, he wants a point of clarification. He wants to know if whenever we take the vote for this budget, where does that deficit come from?
I mean, how does it get
Like,
paid off?
how does it get paid for? We're not going to default on our electric bill because if I can speak to it, we basically have a piggy bank that has gone up and down over the years. So, Paul, you can probably speak to that much better.
We currently have $180,000 in what's called unrestricted operating reserve. So that'll cover this deficit and a couple more years of similar deficit. Then we're going to be in trouble. We're going to have to start eating into funds that are, well, elsewhere in the budget.
So, there's a
Not
lot
in
of
the budget,
pockets
but
of money.
In our
But I am forever the optimist. You all know that. Our actual budget, the last page, page 3, middle column, we expected 2022 to have a deficit of $48,000. We had a deficit actually of $36,000, but that does not take into account that Calico had an excess of $28,000. So really, our combined financial situation was negative $8,000. We can subtract $8,000 for quite a few years with a $160,000 undesignated funds. What we've said in this budget is that we have $61,000 now with our amendment that is going to be deficit. We have a very good chance of that being much less than it is written, just like this past year.
Appreciate your optimism.
Pardon me?
I appreciate your optimism. Because we lost $40,000 in the investment fund.
Please use the mic, and this is hard, we're having individual conversation that.
There's a lot of factors affecting the overall deficit and how the deficit gets covered. But Paul gave you the bottom number. As far as the books show, we've got $180,000 to cover the $70,000 deficit. Who knows what the $70,000 deficit be? Although, as Pastor, you've pointed out, recently we always seem to come in better at the end of the year than what the budgeted deficit is. How long can that happen? Who knows?
It's been happening for a long time, well before I got here. And it's not, and we can't base it upon that. I think what we need to do is say we made some goals. We're going to reevaluate these goals before we get to the end of the year and say, can we keep doing this? Can we do it another year? And that's
Go back to Hal. He's had his hand up for.
Ooh, who is
Hal
that?
Nilsson.
Who?
Hal Nilsson.
It's been answered.
Okay.
It's been answered.
Sorry, I missed you.
I just need a bit of clarification. So we have reserves with money. We have the endowment fund with money. And then there's Calico that brings in money.
Yes.
Is that right? And when we run a deficit budget, whatever amount it is, where's that coming out of? Which fund are we taking it out of?
It comes out of the unallocated reserves. The endowment fund is not strictly to be used for operating funds. There's a dividing line. It's to be used for outside of the church for fulfilling the mission rather than repairing the roof, although we have approved that change to the policy also. But the basic purpose of the endowment is not to cover utilities, repairs, ongoing expenses. That's not part of the funds like you asked for. Funds available, $180,000 are set is the.
All right, is there any more discussion on the motion?
Since we changed the choir director to a full-time, year-round thing, my suggestion is we change that title to be music director, because that person is in charge of the music besides, they're not directing the choir in the summer, but they're still in charge of the music, so.
Is that another amendment? Before we vote? Okay.
A suggestion.
We will look at that.
I think that would need to bring out personnel and as well as the person that's taking the position. For clarification, I think what John Krakow was speaking to is that during the summer, it's the opportunity to do some planning with me and the worship and music team. Yeah, that's probably more than a choir director, but in order to collaborate on these things, to look at Easter and Christmas and that kind of thing, there needs to be some collaboration, and so in the summertime is a good time to do that.
What line item she talking about?
Under salary and wage on page 2.
All right, further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. The motion, Nancy? I'm sorry. Nancy doesn't have a voice today. I'll do it. The motion is to adopt the budget with the one amendment to going 52 weeks for the choir director versus 42 weeks. And that's more than just for full transparency. There are other costs that will impact with payroll taxes and things like that, just payroll taxes. With that clear?
I guess my only question would be, is 52 weeks, does the choir director not get vacation? I mean, is 52, I mean, that, I hear what we want to do is we want to have that as a full-time position, but do we then have to go back and dissect whether?
Again, that's, I would defer that to the personnel committee.
That's great.
Because they're going to have to make the formal offer to the candidate. So what we're doing is setting their limit on what our ideal salary is. And if there needs to be adjustments one way or the other, the personnel committee will come back to the council for our action. You're giving us the framework to do that job. All right, any more questions? All in favor of adopting this budget, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Budget is carried. Bob, thank you for keeping us on track. And legal, I really don't want to go to Robert's jail. All right, the last one, and I promise this will be brief. One of the things that came out of the town hall was a desire to improve this space, to make it more inviting to some of the current people that use it, some people who right now can't use it, and that revolves around a project that was incorporated in one of the ad hoc committees that we had before Pastor Christie got here, that was the ad hoc committee to improve the facility, and the idea was not to cut back but to drive forward. And one of the projects was to infill this, I'm glad we're in here, infill the area between the back and the table with a platform, and into that platform incorporating a ramp so somebody that's ability challenged can get to the altar. If you'll remember when Pastor Phil used to guest preach for us, we would have to carry him up the stairs in his wheelchair in order to preach. And that bothered me, not because I didn't mind lifting his wheelchair, but that was not being the welcoming environment that we opt for. I updated the pricing, and this is extremely rough and probably higher. If we bought just the materials, wait a minute, for an infill and did it with Bill Eglinton and his hammer. Oh, did I volunteer you for something? I'm sorry. We're looking at about a $12,000 to $13,000 investment. On the good side, lumber prices are dropping according to all of my pricing guides by almost 10% a month. So it's no longer going up 20% a month. It's not down where it was pre-COVID, but it's moving in the right direction. And then a decision that will have to be made at a later point is the surface that goes on top of the new platform and the existing platform. Currently we have the blue carpet, which is probably starting to show its age. And when we infilled, it would have to be the whole thing either recarpeted which I think is, there are two distinct camps here. The people that have to stand on it and walk on it like the carpet. The musicians, like Brad Ellingbo, want a hard surface up there. So we're looking at either carpeting or a laminate flooring on the raised platform. So the bottom line is we're looking at about a $22,000 investment all in, whether we do some of the work ourselves, that'll go down. If we contract it all out, that's probably a reasonable estimate, which is a scientific wild guess. And although this type of project came out of the town hall as a priority, the council, finance, who have discussed this so far, have looked at this as an unfunded obligation. And as of today, we are going to open a campaign to fund that $20,000 or as close as we can to it. The stewardship committee has stepped forward to assist in this campaign, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to be one of the first people to make my donation, and I hope everyone else does as well, because we can make this space even more welcoming than it is already. So that was it. There's no vote with that, so I can't get in trouble and go to Bob jail. I thank everybody for your frank, open, and honest discussions today. And Pastor, should we end with the Lord's Prayer, or do you want to do something else?
I just want to lead prayer. When I try to do the Lord's Prayer without words in front of me, I get lost because the other people are different speed. So, Mike. Oh, Mike. Sorry. I invite us to breathe deep again. We breathe in and out 3 times, knowing the Spirit, Father, and Christ and Spirit is among us. Gracious God, thank you for the passion and questions and desire to do your ministry in this space and beyond. Thank you for the amazing resources that we have, and that is beyond money. We have some incredibly faithful and passionate and beautiful people seeking your desire and then putting hands and feet and voice to that. So thank you for this time. Thank you for all the leadership. And as we seek to keep moving forward, we invite those who are feeling a call to jump on board wherever they feel called. Keep us in your care this afternoon as you keep your entire world on our hearts of all the things going on. May we be mindful as we make decisions that we are a part of a whole. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you all.
Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
That one. 12:26.